Gurur Brahma, Gurur Vishnu, Guru Deva Maheshwara, Guru Sakshat Parabrahma, Tasmai Sri Gurave Namaha. I bow to my Guru as Brahma, as Vishnu, as Shiva. I bow to him as you, because that one God who is in my Guru is in all creatures, in every human being, even in every atom. You are that, so the scriptures say. I am that, all of us are the same. Somebody said to me once, but how can you feel that you're teaching your Guru? Well, the answer to that is that I never feel that I'm teaching. I feel that I'm only sharing. But I also feel that that same self that is in me and struggling to achieve perfection is also in you. And I address that self, because you are that infinite one living only temporarily in this little body and this little ego. I would like to read to you from my Guru's book, Conversations with Yogananda, which has just recently come out for the first time, and in India, even before America. Peggy Dietz, whom I had known at Mount Washington as Peggy Bowman, was a sincere devotee. After some years in the monastery, however, in obedience to the Master's instructions, she left our way of life. After her departure, she kept in close contact with him. He instructed me, Peggy informed me years later, to give Kriya initiation to anyone I met if that person seemed to me ready to receive it. When he told me that, I protested, but Master, what will the organization say? Are you following them, he asked, or are you following me? Now this to me is a very important thing, because it's so easy to get the Guru mixed up with the work that he did, the organization that he founded. And in fact, organizations have a way of proclaiming themselves as the absolute. The Catholic Church says that it is Christ virtually, so does my Guru's organization, so do most spiritual organizations. There's a difference between the Guru and his disciples, the Guru and the organization. Always remember that what you must be loyal to is not a form, but an inner consciousness. As it says in the Bible, to as many as received him, to them gave he the power to become the sons of God. Now, to receive Christ is the same as receiving the divine consciousness through any great master. And you're not receiving a consciousness when you're receiving an organization. An organization is made of buildings and bricks and paths and roads and lawns and all sorts of things, but it isn't spirit. You'll find that even among the disciples of a great Guru, they're not all equal in their understanding. The understanding that we must seek in ourselves is, above all, how we can relate to the infinite in ourselves. You know, when my Guru accepted me, when he accepted all his disciples, he never accepted us as his disciple. He always said, God is the Guru. When we touched his feet, I've said this before on these programs, he would always very seriously put his hand here as if to show, I direct your devotion to God. It is to God and to the Guru, God in the Guru, not to the man. Don't think of the Guru even as a man. It's the infinite whom the Guru is trying to help you to know. And too many disciples get all tied up in the Guru's personality. And I've been in ashrams where the latest gossip of the day was whom the Guru had smiled on today. They make a totally human thing out of it. One time I remember I was at a person's home with my Guru and several other disciples, and I was feeling very strongly his joy and deep devotion for that presence that I felt in him, such that I remember when we left the house, the hostess said to me, I see you're a great student of yoga. I said, no, I'm a sincere student of Yogananda. I was wrong, she was right. I shouldn't have understood it that way, because it's yoga I was understanding in him. When we reached home, he sent me to my room to meditate, and he kept the others with him to chat, because he wanted me to have a relationship with him that was inside, not outside, that didn't depend on his smile, on his glance of approval, or worrying about any glance of disapproval. It's a matter of inner consciousness. The amazing thing that I found, too, living with him, was that any thought that I had, he would respond to, even if it was only a thought. I'll give you a story that is not about me, although I probably will tell you others about myself too. But this one disciple used to say to him in meditation, I love you, Guru. When he met our Guru one time on the garden path in Encinitas, the Guru smiled at him lovingly and said, I love you too. He knew our thoughts. I remember how I used to pray, teach me to love you as you love me, because I knew his love was something much deeper. It wasn't a human kind of love. And yet his answer was a bracer, I must say. When he saw me, he said, how can the little cup hold the whole ocean? You see, the love that he had for us was oceanic. It wasn't the love of a personality for a personality. It wasn't I loving you. There was no ego there to love anybody. He loved us from our own center. He was the infinite Lord loving us in our own central reality. He was, in a sense, our own self. Now, you don't get this from an organization. Listen, I've started an organization myself, and I wouldn't talk this way if I thought equivocatingly that, well, yeah, but this organization is different. It isn't. No organization can be different. Always. And the only purpose of a spiritual organization, the only purpose of the organization I've given my lifeblood, you might say, to founding, is to help you to know something that has nothing to do with organizations. To know God in your own self, to know who you are. That is what you should follow. And whereas it is true that in an organization you need some discipline, you need some order, you have to have certain rules and people have to follow them. I know all about that. I was in charge of the monks there at Mount Washington for quite a few years, and I had to be after them to come to the meditations and follow the rules and all those things. But I knew in my heart that that's just a means to an end. That's not what it's all about. For years I had to be and was in fact considered the organization man par excellence, you might say, because I had to organize the monks, the main office, the lay disciple order, the ministers, the centers, just about you name it, I had to organize it. And still, I never forgot. And boy, when I came to India, it was such a joy to discover the consciousness that God is in everything, that God is everywhere. You cannot organize God. No church can claim him as its own. And what a joy it was to discover that. I remember, I should say, talking with Ananda Mohima, and I could talk some Bengali, and we used to talk Bengali together, me quite haltingly, and she very fluently. And I wanted to say, because we were talking about Kriya Yoga as taught by Lahiri Mahasaya. And of course, Kriya Yoga, as you surely know, is a very common word. Kriya just means action. So Kriya Yoga can be many types of yoga. But the kind of Kriya we teach is that Kriya Yoga, which was initiated, or I should say, promulgated, taught by Lahiri Mahasaya. So I knew that Ananda Mohima knew various Kriya Yogas, and I wanted to distinguish, but I didn't have the Bengali to explain that I'm talking about the Kriya Yoga of Lahiri Mahashai. So I said, my Kriya Yoga, Amar Kriya Yoga. She immediately said, Na, Amar Kriya Yoga. No, my Kriya Yoga, meaning it's mine too. How can you call it yours? Well, I appreciated that answer and we both laughed over it because I hadn't been able to express myself clearly, but that's really what I felt. I don't own anything. I've written 79 books or 80 books. They're not my books. I've written 400 or more pieces of music. That's not my music. It's all God. We can only express Him as He gives us the wisdom, the understanding, the intuitive insight to do it. And I've seen that indeed it does come that way. I remember many years ago, Warner Books, it's a large publishing house in America, had wanted me to write a book for them. And we agreed that the title should be Meditation for Starters. Well, this was quite a few months later, about 10 months later, they wrote to me and said, no, in fact, they decided that they wanted to change the title to Superconsciousness. Now, you can't plaster a title on a book. You've got to change the book to match the title. I did write Meditation for Starters eventually, but I couldn't write it for them. I had to write a completely new book. I said, how long do you give me to write this book? And they said, well, we'd like to have it by the end of June. Well, this was the end of April. And I had 2 weeks that I had been already scheduled to travel and lecture in different states. So essentially I had not quite 2 months, it was more like 1.5 months to write a book that I felt that a book on superconsciousness required 2 years of work, minimum 1 year of work, but my goodness, 1.5 months? I thought I can't possibly, but they wanted, and that I have to admit that money, I'm not attached to money, but we needed it. We had already bought equipment for our recording studio with this money, and I couldn't just say, well, sorry, I've changed my mind and give what they give me already back to them. I had to finish it. Well, I said, okay, I can't do it. It's not possible for me. But God and Guru can do it. So I closed the door. I turned off my telephone. I refused to speak to anybody. And for all that time, I just absolutely, what I did was, it's an odd way of doing it, you might think, but I just sort of opened the floodgates. I said, all right, I can't do this book, but you can, so you're going to have to do it. And I just opened my mind and said, all right, pour through me. Do you know, it really worked. It's one of my best books. I hope my other books are okay. I don't know how great this book is, but I have to say that of the books that I've written, such as they are, and all the usual things that a writer disclaims to show his intense humility, I have to say that, yes, I do think it's a good book. And I got it, believe it or not, it was due June 30th. We put it in FedEx in California to reach New York on June 29th. It reached there June 30th. Unbelievable, but I was able to do it. Now, in this time, I had another little awkward thing come up because Derek Bell, who was the most, I should say the most famous harpist in Ireland, had written me and asked me if I would write some music that he would like to record for an album. And it was the sort of thing that one doesn't turn down. And I wrote back and I said, well, look, I can write melodies, but I don't know the harp. I don't know if I can write music for the harp. He wrote back a very stern letter, you can and you must kind of thing. Of course, it was very generous on his part, but I was a little worried. And some people had suggested various melodies that I had already written, thinking that, well, maybe they would work for me, but they didn't fit an Irish harp. They didn't fit the Irish mood. I realized I would have to write Irish music. Well, after finishing this book, Superconsciousness, I was in such a superconscious state myself that I had 3 days before I was scheduled for another lecture tour. In 2 days, I wrote all those melodies, and then I had 1 day to pack and leave. When I came back in August, I wrote the words for so many of the songs and refined them a little bit, but it worked, and it's called Mystic Harp, and it's a very successful album which has been played on many international airlines and so on. But the point is that if you understand that you don't have to think institutionally, you don't have to think rigidly, you can just let God do it through you. Realize that your whole relationship is with Him, not with anything external. You'll be amazed at what He can do through you. Keep the door of your heart open to Him, and you will see that if you just open it to Him, He will be able to flood your consciousness. He will be able to give you all the answers, all the inspiration, all the guidance you seek. God bless you.
Door of my heart, open wide, I keep for Thee. Door of my heart, open wide, I keep for Thee. Wilt Thou come, wilt Thou come, just for once come to me. Wilt Thou come, just for once come to me. Will my days fly away without seeing Thee, my Lord? Will my days fly away without seeing Thee, my Lord? Night and day, I look for Thee, night and day. Night and day, I look for Thee, night and day. Door of my heart, open wide, I keep for Thee. Door of my heart, open wide, I keep for Thee. Wilt Thou come, just for once come to me. Wilt Thou come, just for once come to me. Will my days fly away without seeing Thee, my Lord? Will my days